Good morning, everyone. On this morning, we will tackle the Module 3 and 4, Foundation of Special and Inclusive Education. But before that, I would like to introduce my teammates Arnie Jane Calderon and Jennifer Bogsukan. Before we begin our report, let us pray first. Almighty Father, we praise and thank you for this day. Watch over us as we go work and studies. Help us in every ways so that we may become children you want us to be. Amen. The overall topics, Module 3, Making School Inclusive, Creating Inclusive Culture, Producing Inclusive Policies, Involving Inclusive Practices. Module 4, Components of Special Needs Education, Child Find, Assessment, Program Option, Curriculum Modification, Parental Involvement. Making school inclusive. So how school create to become inclusive? Making school inclusive is truly inclusive. Start in each classroom, but it must also wider in scope. It requires specific strategies and a shift in culture that is shared or encouraged by the school administration, teachers, and students. And also, making school inclusive is all about ensuring access to quality education for all students by effectively meeting their diverse needs in way of responsive, way of accepting, to respect them, and also to support them. Act of 1975, Inclusion in Education, has traditionally meant making sure students with disabilities are integrated into general education classrooms to the greatest possible extent. It was a big deal and a big change when our country implemented the Education for All Handicapped Children. Creating an inclusive school importance. Any idea from the other group? Why inclusive school is important? Creating an inclusive school is important because to provide all students with a free, appropriate, and less restrictive education. Students gain social and community skills. Isolating students in special education classrooms limited their full range of education opportunities, including learning and practicing important social skills. And also inclusive school experience fewer absences and behavioral issues. Students included in the general education classroom develop better self-esteem. And also inclusive school lead to greater overall acceptance and tolerance. Students not traditionally included in education also benefit from inclusion. All students and teachers benefit from a great support system. Inclusion is important because it provides a better quality education for all children and are instrumental in changing discriminatory attitude. And also school provide the context for a child. So first to relationship with the world outside their family's friend or etc. Enabling the development of social relationship and interaction and outside world, and also to respect and understanding grow when students of diverse abilities and background play, socialize, and learn together. And also to help those students with learning differences. It will also help to support students that don't have a learning differences by making them more aware, tolerant, and understanding of each other. In inclusive culture, the path of creating an inclusive school culture. Inclusion requires a strong commitment to and belief in involving everyone. Diversity must be considered a positive attribute and resources rather than a challenge or detriment. All stakeholders collaborate with all students' best interests in mind. Inclusive school maintain a solid connection to the community. There is zero tolerance for bullying or excuses. Then inclusive school are willing to innovate and take risks with new idea. So the students, they freely express who they are on their own opinions and point of views. Also, fully student must fully participate in teaching, learning works, and social activities, and student they feel safe from abuse, harassment, or unfair criticism. Using inclusive policies is a transparent or evidence-driven, accessible, and responsible to as wide a range of citizens as possible. So there are 6 tips for developing and implementing an inclusion policy. The first one in developing inclusion policy is think about the principles of inclusion. The second one is consider language, and the third one is to write an inclusion policy statement based the principle of inclusion. And to implementing your inclusion policies, first one is ensure the other policies or procedure and practices agree with your inclusion policy. And the second one is get your inclusion policy approved by your board of directors or child care center and nursery school. The third one and the last one is to review and update the policy and other policies, procedure, and practice regular. Producing inclusive policies is a transparent or evidence-driven, accessible, and responsible to as wide a range of citizens as possible. So in this case, in policies of inclusion, students who have special need to perform the roles of learners appropriately. They need equal access to evaluation and education program evaluation, no. Kuan man maski naay natipo ninyong special needs, so I mean even na butang ka sa mga normal nga mga tao, so dapat mo participate po ka sa ilahang mga gipangbuhat, no. As a equal, no, mo participate ta kanang mo kung unsay lang gipangbuhat, so dapat mo cooperate pud ta nila. We should to socialize them, no, mo socialize. So inclusion involves that all students to interact in the classroom during regular lessons, so there should be no particular attitude towards some students or any discrimination at school during the process of learning, so that all students could have a sense of belonging. So mabati pod nila ang maski nabutang sila dito sa mga normal nga mga kuan, ma-sense nila, mabati nila nga bilong pud sila ana nga world, mabilong pud sila ana nga society, no. So we should to respect them and to motivate them. I-motivate nato para makasabot sila. So we need to motivate them, no, sa unsay lang situation. So individual student must be participate fully in classes, no. So ma-normal or ma-special, we need to participate yun. Participate yun ta sa mga activities sa schools. So all the staffs can interact more fully with other staff and students and can extend and develop their own cultural awareness. Then also the university as an organization benefits from culturally diverse staff and students through exposure to alternate perspective and experiences. So that's all. Thank you. And this is my assigned topic, and let's proceed to the continuation.
Okay, for the continuation, steps to writing an inclusion policy. Inclusion policy introduction is seen to involve the identification and minimizing of barriers to learning and participation and the maximizing of resources to support learning participation. So, there are 6 steps for developing your inclusion policy. First, think about the principle of inclusion. Second, consider language. Third, write an inclusion policy statement based on the principle of inclusion. Implementing your inclusion policies. First, ensure the other policies, procedure, and practices agree with your inclusion policy. Get your inclusion policy approved by your board of directors or child care center and nursery schools. Third, review and update the policy and the other policies, procedure, and practices regularly. Developing the inclusion policies. First, think about the principle of inclusion. The principle of inclusion are access, participation, and support the guide, your decision, and action. Second, consider language. The words you use in a policy have a significant effect on your practices. So, general language. So, the word general language use language that support the intent of your inclusion policy and clearly describe your inclusive practice. Use words such as every or each. People first language. The person or child you should always come first when you refer to a disability. This focus attention on the child and his or her abilities rather than the abilities. People first language is a type of linguistic prescription which put a person before a diagnosis describing what conditions a person. So, for example, use child with autism rather than autistic child. Ito siya examples of people first language. So, strength-based language. State your policy in a way that focuses on the abilities of each child rather than disabilities. So, strength-based language is because most people associate the word challenge with an obstacle that can be overcome, and if you overcome that challenge, you feel accomplished. So, for example of the strength-based language is, we welcome children of all abilities over we welcome children with these abilities. So, definitions. Terms used in your policy may need to be defined so families and the public can understand the meaning of your policy. So, for example, a child with additional support needs adapted equipment. Professionals who work with the program make sure you are specific and explain words and concepts. Number 3. Write an inclusion policy statement based on the principle of inclusion. The principle of inclusion are access, participation, and support. Your inclusion policy needs to describe each and one. So, evolving inclusive practices. So, evolving inclusive practices is an approach to teaching that recognizes the diversity of students, enable all students to access course content, fully participate in learning activities, and demonstrate their knowledge and strength. At assessment, inclusive practices values the diversity of student body as a resource that enhances the learning experience. Okay. Some of the benefits of inclusive practices include: first, teaching pupils about diversity and equality. Second, developing student empathy and sensitivity to people who are different. So themselves. First, improving friendship, confidence, and self-image. Providing teacher with additional ways to incorporate problem solving, so teamwork and collaboration into their lessons. Promoting parental confidence that the children are being accepted and can be successful in the school setting. Thank you.
Module 4, Components of Special Needs Education. The Department of Education, DepEd, has organized the urgency to address this problem and therefore guarantees the right for these children to receive appropriate education within a regular or inclusive classroom setting. A comprehensive inclusive program for children with special needs has the following components. Number 1. Child Find. This is locating where these children are through the family mapping survey, advocacy campaigns, and networking with local health workers. The children with special needs who are not in school shall be listed using inclusion number 1. These children shall be visited by special education or SPED teachers, and parents should be convinced to enroll their children in SPED centers or school nearest their home. In this way, the students have a better access to education, and it is better that the teachers should convince the parents because their children can benefit this program. So as a parent, dili dapat ta mag-uol nga ang ato ang anak is maapil sa SPED. Kay kaning programa dili lang pod para sa kayuhan nato kundi para kayuhan pod sa atong anak nga maapil ani nga kanang curriculum. Kay as a SPED teachers, kabalo man na sila unsaon pag-handle sa mga children nga na special needs. Kabalo sila unsaon nila pag-adjust, kabalo sila unsaon nila pag-handle ang pagtudlo nila. Kay dili man tanang parents na knowledge o kabalo og unsaon pagkuan sa ilahang mga anak, pagtudlo og inani nga unsay ilahang kinahanglanon as a special needs. Number 2, assessment. This is the continuous process of identifying the strengths and weaknesses of the child through the use of formal and informal tools for proper program grade placement. Existing SPED centers in the division shall assist regular schools in assessment process. So before ta ma-enroll sa SPED program or SPED curriculum, nagida sila yung ginatawag nga assessment or test. This test can identify students kung mabilong magyud sila. Namagod sila yung mga process nga kanang mutabang for example the teachers na sila yung mga test nga ipa-try sa students kung bilong ba sila or dili ba sila bilong. Kay in this kanang assessment mao ni maka-help sa student nga mo identify kung special needs ba gyud siya or dili. Next is number 3, program option. Regular schools with or without trained SPED teachers shall be provided educational services to children with special needs. These schools shall access educational services from SPED centers or SPED trained teachers. So there are 3 program options. So the first program option that shall be organized for these children is a self-contained class for children with similar disabilities, which can be monograde or multigrade, handled by a trained SPED teachers. So in this first option, similar sila tanan og disabilities and it is handled by trained SPED teachers. So the second option is inclusion or placement of the child with disabilities in general education or regular class where he or she learns with or his or her peers under a regular teachers and or SPED trained teachers who addresses the child's needs. The second option was ang bata kay naa sa regular class where she or he learns with his peers or friends nga mutabang sa iya pag-develop na handled gyapon sa isa ka trained SPED teacher or a regular class teacher. So the fourth is the curriculum modifications. These shall be implemented in the forms of adaptations and accommodations to foster optimum learning based on individuals' needs and potentials. Modification in classroom instructions and activities is a process that involves new ways of thinking and developing teaching learning practices. It also involves changes in any of the steps in the teaching learning process. Curriculum modifications shall include service delivery options like cooperative or team teaching. Na may ubang teachers nga dili kayo sila pakayhanas or bag-o pa sa field. So pwede sila sa kanang team teaching or kanang cooperate sila kung saan pag-handle sa students. The provision of support services from professionals and specialists, parents, volunteers, and peers or buddies to the children with special needs is an important feature in the inclusion program. Pwede tabangan or pwede kanang cooperate ang teacher o parent. For example, mangutana ang teacher kung saan ni siya pag-handle ani kay maupay pagkuan niya kanang sulod sa field, then mga siya advice sa kanang parent nga unsaon man ni dawi og magtantrum siya, unsaon siya pag-handle, pila ka minute kasagaran sa iyang magtantrums. So, the last is the parental involvement. So, this plays a vital role in preparing the children in academic, moral, and spiritual development. The parents shall involve themselves in observing children's performance, volunteering to work in the classroom as a teacher aide, and providing support to other parents. It is important jud nga naayud ang parents kanang involved gyapon. Ang uban gani magatang sila sa classroom para kanang ang kasagaran man go daw uban special needs kay confident sila kung nailang parents, so dapat nagyud ang mama or papa mulantaw sa ilaha mag-support, mag-cheer unsaon nila pagkuan kanang answer sa activities, unsaon nila mahimong confident sila inana kay ang ubang special needs kay clingy kaayo, more on kanang langi sa parents, so dapat ang teacher man gud kay dili kay sila kanang usahay tuuhan sa special needs sa muntang og bag-o pa sa program, so nagyud ang parents nga mag-atang ani. Then naapoy kuan bag-ong parents nga kanang dili pa kayo sila makadawat nga ilahang anak apil na belong sa special needs, so kanang dapat jud i-cheer po nila nga ani mami, ani daddy nga kanang ako naka-experience po ko na before, then acceptance lang yun, then guide dayon children are special, so bisag unsa pa ilahang kanang kuan sa life, so bisag unsa pa ang atong anak pohon nabilong ba siya sa special needs or dili, it is important nga tagaan gyapon nimo siya attention samot na if special needs mas kuan jud nimo siya hatagan jud nimo siya attention kay pasanginahanglan sila attention. So imo harang ibot lang sa mga hunahuna nga that is not a problem, it's a blessing. So mao na tanan ma'am, classmates, mao na akong report. Thank you.